Good morning, everybody, and welcome to IGTV. We have with us William H. Murray with the InfraGard editorial, and Bill is going to be talking about classification and labeling of data, something I know not enough of, but would like to learn more of. Bill, take it away.
In the early days, much of computer security research was aimed at developing computers that could be relied upon to enforce the DoD scheme for restricting access to data classified in the national security interest. Out of this research emerged the Bell-LaPadula model, the Trusted Computer Security Evaluation Criteria, the TCSEC, and rules-based access control. These all assumed that data is classified, that is, it is labeled as to its sensitivity. The research assumed that data is born classified, without paying much attention to who says so or why. Data is really not born classified. Somebody has to decide. Classification is an economic decision. While some people think that one is simply making a statement about an inherent property of the data, what one is really doing is making a statement about how one believes the data should be protected and at what cost. The class maps the data to a set of methods and procedures to be used to protect it. We call this mapping policy. Since these methods have a cost, by assigning a class or a label, one says that is how much the enterprise or the authority is prepared to spend to protect this data. The label can be thought of as a code that the author classifier uses to communicate to the users of the data how he, the author classifier, wants it to be protected. For example, when one labels an object confidential, one communicates to all custodians and users of the data that it is only to be seen by those who have a need to know. When one labels it top secret, one asserts that among other measures, the data should be locked up when not in use. We choose our label or class based upon the sensitivity, a term of art, of the data. Sensitivity is a function of context and association. A single bit of data is sensitive only if one knows what it signifies. A social security number standing by itself may not be sensitive, but the bind of a social security number to a name starts to be sensitive. As one associates date and place of birth, the names of parents, address, credit scores, and credit card numbers, sensitivity increases. Sensitivity can be seen to increase along an axis from raw data to organized and analyzed data to conclusions or intelligence derived from the data to plans of actions based upon the intelligence. Thus, for most business enterprises, competitive intelligence, product plans, and business plans tend to be very sensitive. The sensitivity of the data is also a function of its timeliness. Reuters charges a premium for data that it plans to give away for free in 15 minutes. At the other extreme, the identity of spies remains sensitive for the life of their grandchildren. The secrets of Ultra remained sensitive until the invention of modern cryptography made them obsolete. We kept them secret for another 20 years just to be on the safe side. While there are exceptions, the sensitivity of data tends to decrease with age. The sensitivity of Thomas Eagleton's mental health records was decaying along a predictable curve until he ran for the U.S. Senate. It spiked again when he was chosen to run for Vice President of the United States. Similarly, the sensitivity also tends to increase with quantity. One credit card number is sensitive, but the sensitivity of a set of such numbers goes up with the number in the set. So, recap, quick. The sensitivity of data is a function of context or association, age, organization and analysis, and quantity. Today we have default sets. In the private sector, these include intellectual property, IP, personally identifiable information, PII, and payment card information, PCI, that must be protected from disclosure, and the books of account that must be protected from manipulation or contamination. In law enforcement, we have investigations in progress and wants and warrants. In intelligence, we must protect not only the conclusions and recommendations, but also the sources and methods by which they were developed. Sources and methods are among the most sensitive data we have because compromise may cost lives and make it difficult to recruit spies. Classification decisions must be made by those who know the most about the data. For business functional data, such as accounts receivable and the payroll, that's usually the manager of the function. By default, it is the person who creates the object. We often refer to this individual as the owner, because the role usually includes the authority and discretion to say who and in what circumstances can see or modify the data. Because the classification decision requires judgment and experience, it is normally reserved to executives, managers, and professionals. Our job as staff is to ensure that the process of creating an object includes the step of labeling it, then to note variances and ensure that they are corrected. However, it's often difficult to identify the responsible individual. I like to say that if there is no designated owner for the data, we probably ought to destroy it. It's amazing how quickly owners step forward when you threaten to take the data away. In business, the label should include the identity of the classifying manager or the authority and the date whereon the classification expires or must be extended. Enterprise policy may require the former and limit the latter. The objective of the system should be to ensure that all data gets the protection that it warrants, but that expensive measures are reserved for only the data that needs it. Underclassification may result in leakage or contamination. Overclassification is inefficient. One issue is binding the classification and the label to the data object. The integrity of the system relies upon the label being tamper-resistant or at least tamper-evident. In ink-based systems, the paper binds the data and the label to the same piece. Because of the mutability of electronic data, the label is part of the metadata and the bind may not be reliable. Closed systems like the AS400 or Lotus Notes help. Encryption can be used to bind the label to an object in such a way that tampering with it will be evident. The integrity of the bind is checked at open time and flagged if the content and the label do not agree. An effective classification and labeling system has to be baked into the culture of the enterprise or organization. Policy, methods, procedures, all members of the organization have to expect labels and must know the measures for all classes that they are likely to see or use. I don't necessarily have to train everybody on how to deal with top secret information, because only a few people are going to see that kind. Moreover, those who create data objects must know how to classify them. Both of these things require constant reinforcement and training. Supervisors, managers, and executives must note variances between the sensitivity of the object and the label assigned and take timely and appropriate corrective action.
Go ahead. Sorry.
50 years of electronic computing has resulted in an explosion of data, if not intelligence. Efficient and even effective information assurance requires not only that we identify the sensitivity of the data, that is, classify it, but also then communicate that judgment to all users of the data, that is, label it. We have seen at RSA and Lockheed Martin what comes from trying to protect all data the same. Luckily, the computer has given us powerful tools. For example, uniform and consistent processes, user identification and authentication, rules-based access control, and encryption to protect the information. In some cases, simply applying the proper label may go a long way toward ensuring that data is protected appropriately. Many organizations have nominal classification and labeling programs that are not effective. When a client tells me that they have such a program, I have a quick test. I ask a couple executives if they would notice if a misclassified document hit their desk, and if so, what they would do about it. I get unsatisfactory answers more often than not. Because such a program must be woven into the warp and woof of the fabric of the enterprise, creating it is difficult, time-consuming, and high maintenance. Of course, that is why those of us who implement classification schemes are called professionals and are paid the big bucks. See you next week.
Thank you, Professor. We certainly appreciate it.